Dear friends, welcome to another episode of today's military news. In this video, we'll discuss a recent report that, through interviews with Russian soldiers, concluded that despite extreme fatigue and a strong desire to return home, many of them reject any ceasefire that doesn't include the complete conquest of the Ukrainian regions that Moscow claims to have annexed. While diplomats in Washington, Kiev, and Moscow work behind closed doors to seek ways to end the conflict, Russian soldiers on the ground view these talks as dangerously disconnected from reality. A ceasefire based on current front lines, as suggested in recent negotiations mediated by the United States and reportedly accepted by Zelensky, would be seen as betrayal by many of the Russian troops currently involved in the invasion of Ukraine. For them, it would mean that the soldiers who died or were wounded fell for nothing, and that the war might have to be fought again in the future. 11 Russian soldiers from different regions and units were interviewed by the New York Times. Their identities were verified through social media and personal documents, though their last names were withheld for obvious security reasons. Despite being strangers from different Russian regions and assigned to unrelated units on the front line, they all expressed frustration, disbelief in political leadership, and outright rejection of any ceasefire that doesn't end in what they call total victory. Sergei, a soldier fighting in the Donetsk region, was blunt. Everyone is tired and wants to go home. But he emphasized that this will only make sense if Russia conquers everything. Otherwise, according to him, they'll have to fight again in the future. The war has shaped a generation of fighters who, as former paratrooper Dmitry warned, were trained to kill without fear of blood. Dmitry said that 1 million Russian men have been shaped by this war, and if they begin to view political leaders as traitors, the domestic consequences could be devastating, an implicit threat to Moscow's central authority. His words highlight a serious dilemma: how to reintegrate men deeply marked by violence back into Russian society if the war ends without a sense of victory. According to the report, many Russian soldiers hastily recruited back in 2022 are still fighting on the front lines. Most original volunteer contracts, initially set for 1 year, have been extended indefinitely, with no end in sight. Several soldiers interviewed revealed that the only way out of the war is to die or be severely injured, as Russia's defense ministry has been automatically renewing contracts in 12-month increments, a clear reflection of the enormous material and human costs Russia is bearing. For many, the only hope of surviving is a peace agreement. However, even that prospect is viewed with hesitation. One soldier said he's deeply tired of the war's hell, but made it clear that stopping now would mean everything was in vain. A recurring theme in the interviews was a sense of resentment. Many soldiers feel abandoned by Russian society. Andrei, one of the interviewees, said people in Russia are living and celebrating as if there is no war. For him, soldiers are no longer seen as heroes, and many accuse top military officials and business elites of profiting directly from the war, and therefore working against peace, as it would end their cycle of public spending and easy money. Since the early months of the war, the Kremlin held fraudulent referendums in the Ukrainian oblasts of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia, claiming overwhelming support for annexation. However, after more than 3 years of fighting, Russia has only fully secured one of those regions, Luhansk. In the others, control ranges between 65% and 75%. Still, the Russian soldiers interviewed insist that retreating now is out of the question. According to them, the land taken at such high human cost is now non-negotiable. Russian soldiers and Ukrainian leaders share the same fear. If the war stops now under the current conditions, it will return in the future. For soldiers like Nikolai, the logic is simple. If there won't be a ceasefire now, then Russia must go all the way. He and many of his comrades believe that if Russia doesn't achieve what it calls total victory, then in 5 or 10 years, war will inevitably resume. This fear is fueled by the widespread belief that Moscow is engaged in an existential war against what Russians call the collective West, a narrative shaped by years of intense propaganda that has molded the minds of the young men now fighting and dying for Vladimir Putin. Despite controlling the state and the media with an iron grip, Putin faces a difficult dilemma. Any deal that looks like a retreat could spark the same kind of resentment that once led to the fall of the Soviet Union after its failed withdrawal from Afghanistan, or to the rise of armed groups like those that challenged the Kremlin in 2023. The memory of Wagner Group's mutiny also lingers as a warning, with inconclusive victories potentially more dangerous than outright defeats. For many soldiers, the war has already gone too far to step back. Dmitry summed up this dilemma by saying, "Either Russia and Ukraine agree to a ceasefire that clearly favors the Russian side, or it's better to keep fighting until the end." Because, according to him, stopping without victory would mean admitting it was all just a game played by Putin. For Dmitry, and likely hundreds of thousands of other Russian soldiers, if this was all just a political game that cost 1 million lives, then what kind of government is sitting in Moscow? Putin, who controls Russian society and its military with an iron fist, is likely well aware of this growing sentiment among his troops. And this, more than anything, may be why he continues to delay and drag out peace negotiations. He knows that stopping now, while still far from his goals, could provoke a backlash from 1 million men who might demand more than just back pay and pensions. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss any updates from the world of military news.